Who's giving me the sign? Luisa, where's Luisa? Yeah. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Good evening again to those that attended the small opening that we just had of the exhibition Room for Housing that we just opened. So welcome also to those that just joined us here in the Oostserre at the faculty. Also very much welcome to those that are watching us from home now, and that will be watching us from home at another moment. As you all know, this is being streamed and also archived in the archives of the faculty. So thanks very much again for coming. I'm very happy that this worked. As I was trying to explain earlier, this is the result of a collaboration between the Team Vision Wonen and the BK or Bouwkunde Public Programs. So we managed to produce this exhibition and these BK talks today in order to talk about something very urgent, no? Which is is first of all housing scarcity, and second, how do we actually want to rethink the country in which we all live. I will start with a little presentation of where we are. So I just want to show you a few slides because what we are seeing today has a lot to do with the BK Talks that we organized 2 years ago. And it's very funny to see how much has changed and how much has not changed at all, no? From those moments. These were slides that I was showing back then. It has to do with the housing shortage in the Netherlands. These are really no news for any one of you here, no? But these were the reasons why we were talking about that 1 million housing program that was, let's say, the spark of what we are seeing here today, no? So anyway, I love collecting some data, no? And it's really astonishing to see how prices have gone up, then down, and then we see here, this is the latest number. Prices, as you all know, they are going up again. So this is a little bit all white. I'm really sorry. There were some images there that didn't pass through, but I think that that's not important because all those things that you just saw is something which is no news for you. This isn't either. This is the situation in which we are. We are in the middle of a climate crisis, of a climate emergency, a climate threat. I don't know how to call it in order to make it more, let's say, alerting, no, or alarming. I don't know what term is better to use anyway. So we don't have housing, or we need more housing, and we are in the middle of this climate crisis. We live in the Netherlands, which is a country which is prone to flooding. That will be one of the main consequences of climate change or the climate emergency. But at the same time, it won't be the only one. Flooding won't be the only one. So one starts wondering that these are questions that we had for that previous BK Talks, is how many new homes do we need? How to guarantee housing affordability? Or is housing for all, for everybody, a political priority? Is density a silver bullet in order to achieve those housing numbers? Do we do it top down? Do we do it bottom up? These are questions that we hope we can discuss here tonight, no? What are the other modes of making the city we should put into practice? These are questions that, as you see, were asked 2 years ago, but I think they are being asked for many decades even, no? I don't think I'm revealing anything new. Where to build them in the midst of the climatic emergency? So this is something that I have been working on for a while, no? Where do we live? Where do we want to locate ourselves in the territory? We can do it arriba, you can do it on top, you can do it on the edge, you can do it inside, you can do it outside, no? And these are questions that are trying to be responded by information here in the document that will be presented in a moment, no? So imagine that you want to build 1 more million homes in the polders, no? Resulting in this kind of what I would consider to be not a utopia, but a subtopia, no? Not to call it dystopia even, no? My house, my fence, my space, my garden, etc. Or what would happen, and this is a very quick exercise, what would happen if we all want to live there? I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name, but this is called the, well, Hure Overflagte, no? What if we try to concentrate 1 million people in one space in the delta? How would that look? What the density will be like, no? Will you see that in the end we'd reach 220 dwellings per hectare, which is almost the same density as Paris. And then you say, oh, well, that's actually doable, no? When you think of images of the city of Paris. What if we urbanize all this new housing around the Friese Mire, and then this is what the urbanization would be like, no? Again, we would end up with a much smaller density than the city of Paris, which is a city that we all love, no? So what happens if we urbanize on that area, or we urbanize in the existing natural areas of the Netherlands? Should we occupy it and put all the housing over there? This is just experiments. These are just ideas. Of course, don't take it that this is not what the document is talking about, but these are ideas that we have been testing. We have been testing before. No, in the end, you end up having maybe 1 million apartments with 9 dwellings per hectare, which is way less than the city of Paris. And if we don't build new, what happens if we build on the vacant buildings? These are experiments that have already been disseminated by authors like Ole Baumann long time ago in the Venice Biennale. No? What if we start reusing large spaces like the terrain that is now occupied by Schiphol, no? And what would be the resulting densities? So this is all parameter how to, let's say, try to understand occupation of territories without going too much into design. No? When we do the same in the harbor of Rotterdam, thinking that maybe one day that land also becomes the lyric. No? What would happen? Then we have 100 dwellings per hectare. When Borneo-Sporenburg is almost the same. What if we occupy the land that is now occupied by the greenhouses? Or what if we, at some point, start reusing the office areas where many of them are vacant, and we turn them into housing? But I've been just talking about very Dutch issues, but I think what we are talking about here, which is illustrated by this document, talking about the Netherlands, can also be transferred to all over the world. This is an article we did together with Maria Elsinga, which is together with us here tonight, no? Where we're looking at, well, we need 6 million homes right now around the world, and what is it that we consider adequate housing? No, is this the kind of housing, and what is it that other countries or other places are doing about it? No, how is it being tackled? How is it being tackled in places like India? No, where with extreme amounts of growth, and what is the housing forms that result from that? What does Germany, for instance, do about hosting immigrants? No, when Angela Merkel decides that yes, we can do it. Yes, we can host the refugees in our country, and what are the architectures that result from that? No, these are the buildings existing that serve to host those immigrants and where they were distributed. Or what's going on in places like New York City with the largest housing agency of the planet, but with a terrible problem because there's no budget any longer to build more housing. No, in the end, we are offered this kind of apartments. These are 30 square meter apartments that became. This is a project which became very popular, but at the same time, one wonders, do I have to live in 30 square meters because there's no other option? Because New York is too expensive? So maybe we need to think about other ways of housing. So this is researches that I have been doing for many years on how do we occupy the territory. And then one starts seeing examples that maybe inspire us here in the Netherlands. The big city where housing is still affordable, that is an article on Tokyo. That is something worth looking at. Or how does Paris stay Paris? By pouring billions into public housing, no? And the city, how does the city result? Anyway, where is the city, where is the housing located, and how does that collective, social, affordable housing look like in terms of projects. Just trying to give you an idea of what is it that is done as well outside in order to find some inspiration when it comes also to design, no? Or how Berlin is operating in terms of cooperative housing. No? What if we share? What if we establish different economies, and what is it that we can do? I say that because this is the last edition of Kenneth Frampton's History of Modern Architecture, and he writes this passage. Maybe this is not nice to see, but this is what he thinks. The Netherlands has been omitted because the country's pioneering architectural tradition does not seem to have survived the neoliberal destruction of its hitherto long-standing socialist traditions. So this is where we are at, no? And this is Kenneth Frampton, with, I think, is quite counts as an objective author. No, this is what he thinks is happening in the country we are talking about. No, that's why I brought this here, and this is why we are here. So today, without further ado, let me introduce this document. I'm not going to introduce it. I'm going to give the word to Ulf and Gerer here. No? So this is a document producing a series of visions of what the Netherlands could be as soon as possible, I would say, 2030 or even earlier if that's possible. I don't know. No? So what we have done for this exhibition is try to translate this document, these guidelines that have been produced by the Team Vision Wonen, which some of their members are actually here. And we translated this into a series of 4 illustrations. I will not explain them in detail because I will give the word to Gerard and Ulf. The artists and the drawers who produce them are here. I want to thank them for all the work that they have done. And I will simply give the word, as I said, to Gerard and Ulf. They will introduce what the document is about, and then what we'd like to have is an open conversation with all of you about what is it that you think of this document, what is missing, what could be added, or what is great, and how to go on. So, Gerard and Ulf, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah. I see.
Yes.
It's nice, eh? You got this. This is the normal one, eh? So this is the extra large one. And maybe you know there's also an extra large screen behind you if the slides are a bit too small. Yeah, I'm really delighted to talk a bit more about the background of the advice, this advice we have produced with a team that's almost complete here. It's a kind of very special undertaking. Oh, nice. You added some additional slides. Yeah. So I want to tell a bit more about the process behind this vision team, because TU Delft has had more vision teams before the housing one, because the TU Delft wants to contribute to solving societal problems. And we are a technical university. We really want to contribute to making a better society in all kinds of ways and forms. So, but the vision team Wonen is a special one, you could say. Because before the housing Wonen vision team, we had a team about quantum computing, earthquakes, climate action, robotics, kind of new developments. But housing is not a new development. We've been working on housing in the Netherlands for over 150 years to make it affordable. But still, we're not able to provide affordable housing for everyone. So the creation of this vision team Wonen is also a response to what is happening in society. So it's not only TU Delft talking to society, but it's also incorporating all the visions that are out there to make housing affordable, sustainable, and neighborhoods also a nice place to live. And what we have done is also, that was the intention, is make a nice advice and give it to Hugo de Jonge. And we started more than 1.5 years ago, and then we had all these problems. Also, Martijn is very close to that in the BZK ministry. And we still want to hand over this advice to the minister, but we'll see how that will come about. The team, almost all team members are here, so that's also great, from 4 different TU Delft faculties. And we are now here at the architecture faculty, but we have received lots of inputs from industrial design engineering, civil engineering and geosciences, and also technology policy and management. So what did we do to produce this? So we first had surveys to capture the input of experts, colleagues working for TU Delft. We had roundtables with our colleagues. We had interviews with people from outside, also from BZK, other experts. And we also had meetings with the rector Magnificus, who really also supported us in creating this advice, and with the deans of all the faculties. So what we are presenting here is not our own work. So we collected input, we structured that, but what we're doing is what Isaac Newton said. We are really standing on the shoulders of others. We really are very grateful for all the input we received. And one of the things that was also important for this, also Javier mentioned that briefly, is the 1 Million Homes initiative 2 years ago, that also collected all the input that this faculty could deliver to produce 1 million homes. That even ended in an online virtual exhibition that was positioned in this hall. It's still available. We can share that link with you. So we are grateful for all the input we got for that. And that led to this value-driven advice. And Ulf will tell more about the content of that advice. Do you also want to hold this? Or
I also want to hold this.
Yeah. The small version.
If you don't have a copy yet, please
there are lots of versions here.
take one. It is rather impossible to sum up what we did here in a short presentation, but I will try anyway. What we are starting with is, we said from the beginning, or the task which our rector was giving to us, or in one of the talks he said, well, it's not so difficult. You have so many people who know about this, the housing challenge, gather advice, put it together, staple, and we can hand it over. And we said, that sounds good, because then we can finish it quickly. But maybe it's interesting to focus and see how the different parts of the advice or the different comments that we get are related to each other, and how to get to something which is, just a discussion with Leo about it, always very easily said and everybody agrees, but very difficult to achieve integration of different aspects. So in the course of this, trying to integrate all of the comments which we got, we said we focus on 4 values that popped up as the most crucial ones, and we can discuss that, but that's what we decided upon. Climate-proofness, flexibility, diversity, and spatial quality. And we said the housing challenge that was becoming very quickly obvious is not only about how to build as many buildings as possible in a short period, but it really is related to areas, to spatial planning, it's related to urban design and neighborhoods, it's related to forms and shapes of housing and buildings, and it's related to the construction industry. All of these things are connected to each other, and that led us to these 4 perspectives which we described. And what was nice with that was, at this moment we were trying to give a very concrete hands-on advice, and you could argue at that moment in how far it's visionary and how far we sketch a vision with that, and that really came back. Somehow we had that part in the report, but it kind of came back through the exhibition to, after we did that, to zoom out again and say, what is the vision and how can we illustrate that which is behind it? And we have very concrete recommendations and actions. It was during one of the talks that we got challenged for that, like tell us, Namen and rugnummers, wouldn't know how to translate that. Tell us specifically, who needs to act and what do we need to do. We made a proposal for that. It can also be challenged. It's in here. But it was very nice that in the end we were able to say the core of our advice very nicely links to these illustrations and visions which we show here. We say, in a nutshell, on the large scale, housing is, of course, very closely related to other big challenges in the Netherlands, climate challenges, energy transition and adaptation to climate, finding different spaces for different kind of functions, and to see how we can have the natural system guiding in the development. That is something big and difficult, and we can all agree upon that. We say a way to deal with that, which we see essential, is collaborative design studies, ontwerp and onderzoek. There we really see a way of how to manage that complexity, and we really recommend that. And we see potentials in different areas, like territories in between, like the water bodies which we create, and different ways of cohabitation in a way of manufacturing and housing. In urban areas, one of the things which we really like to underline is if we densify urban areas, high quality urban space is essential, and high quality urban space needs to, on the one hand side, combine climate adaptation, water management and heat stress, and on the other hand, space for local initiative, space for community ownership, different community initiatives on different levels. If we go down, or if we further zoom into buildings, then we think there is a kind of maybe contradictory goals which we think really need to be combined. On the one hand side, we see that the demands, the wishes for housing are much more diverging. There is a broad scale of how people want to live, and an average Dutch row house cannot accommodate all of these. So on the one hand side, we plead for more diversity for all kind of different residents. And on the other hand, we think that buildings should have much more in their DNA, that they are adaptable and changeable, ideally, and then we go again to the future vision, that ideally, if your relationship breaks down, it is easy to split your apartment instead of moving back to your parents, what we have a lot at this moment. And here we see that in order to get these new types of homes, collective housing projects really have a core role, have a very big potential to be kind of pilots and experiment and show what we may want in the future. And then we see that our whole building sector can, we really trust that this big housing challenge, which will require not only, but it will require new built homes, that it could really profit from this large amount of new homes that we need to do, that we could use the challenge to scale up different new construction methods. Modular homes, industrial building, bio-based materials, demountability, open building, old concepts renewed, partly old concepts renewed, where we try to imagine how they can gain scale now through this housing challenge. We have more details in here, and you cannot read them before you start debating about it, but we accept that. And yeah, what for us it is summing up is that we hope we can stimulate action. And what kind of action that is, we're here to discuss. This is partly we point at different parties which need to do something, but we also think that we should look at ourselves, at the different faculties involved in TU Delft, and see how we can, in different ways, contribute to this challenge.
Okay, I think we should start a discussion. I I suppose that most of you know the document, and I also think that the illustrations that we saw are quite talkative enough. There's some people who don't come from the faculty, and I think it's really nice that we open up every now and then our faculty to others from outside. So I would like to give the word. I know Martijn is here, sorry for pointing at you, but somehow, Martijn, maybe you could introduce yourself in a second, but Martijn represents the executive power. And I think one of the ideas that we want here, sorry for being a little bit blunt, but that's a very Dutch way of doing things. So you representing the executive power, please let us know what is it that you think or feel when you see these images, when you hear what we are up to, and what modes of transferring this into effective policies there are. We have microphones around. So Martijn, you need to break the ice, but here, Luisa.
So thank you for inviting me and feeling me a bit shy. I'm just to be a policymaker. I work at the Housing Directorate at the Ministry of the Interior. And my job is mostly to be, let's say, we would call it in English, housing research manager. And it means liaising between, let's say, the really day-to-day policy-making people and the, let's say, the academic world and the plan bureaus and statistical office, cadastre, and people like that. I've been involved slightly in the vision team. But the first thing, my first impression today was that when you visualize it, it really starts to stimulate the thinking. And of course, the question is, what's the point? What are you trying to convey? Which is the point you are trying to make? And I think it connects to something which is important and which can be a role of, let's say, designers. So that's me. I think one of the issues is, of course, that if you work in a ministry, you get used to, let's say, the day-to-day style of policy making. And if you want to understand that, it's of course, let's say, the interplay between professionalism in your territory, housing or urban development or social security or something, and then again the interaction with, let's say, the political side of things, which is a very busy game and a tough game sometimes, but then again, it's good to be over here. And maybe some of you have read a recent book about the changes in policy-making style. It's written by Josine Theo. And she says that we've been in accelerating tempo of decision-making. She put it to other words, but the Dutch people can read on it. I would really recommend it. And she describes perspective in which, let's say, in the old days, there was due time to develop these long-term visions of society. And of course, these were called in Dutch verzuiling. Let's say it's the old style, it's the Christian Democrats, it's the socialists, it's the liberals, Protestants and the Catholics, etc. But they were given visions of society, and then there was ample time just to develop policies and guidelines and legislation and stuff in order to attain the Catholic ideal world, or the Protestant ideal world, or the liberal, etc. And this has started to erode or to go missing, first of all due to the changes in the 1970s, when people want to democratize and solve problems in society rather than adhere to some vision given from above. And then again, things start accelerating, and the style of government, in her book, it's more about solving political problems, but also increasing the speed, focusing on short-term problem solving, and in many cases do problem solving by means of budgetary measures. And that's an important mechanism to understand. And I think what we're seeing now is the result, and what you can do as designers or as academics or whatever you feel like, is to show that there's other possible debates. Not, let's say, do the short term about, let's say, the wet betaalbare huur or the wet regie volkshuisvesting, but there's other perspectives on this matter. And I think if I look at it from what I've seen, some of these, the first one and the fourth one, I thought, well, these are doable, but the complexity is in the middle too, because it's, if you put forward a vision on housing, driven on values, it's not only about the buildings, it's not only about the bricks, but there's a vision about society, about inclusivity and climate change, etc., and you make them explicit, which is very good, which is not in a sense. But when you look at these two middle pictures, it comes to mind that there's also, let's say, the effect on society as a whole. So it does not only affect climate change, it also affects social security. It affects, let's say, the financing of care for the elderly. It affects so many things. It affects many regulations on, let's say, food safety, or let's say financing of housing associations and collaborative stuff. So it tends to many more. And I think one of the roles which you can use as, let's say, TU Delft, of course you're not specialist on social security and stuff like that, but try to stick to the idea that we have chosen 4 values and be explicit about it, because some people will share these values, others won't, which is true, of course. And then consistently show, if you work through these values, from these perspectives, that you can end up with visions like this, and any changes in building regulations, in, let's say, the structuring of buildings, maybe in many things of public space, but also in, let's say, yeah, much more of the fabric of society, and in, let's say, the top-down level of spatial planning, and keep communicating that, and try to bring people to the point that they see, well, okay, this is one vision about it, and we can also talk about vision, and yeah, help us with that. And be prepared to go to debate, because if you take it to our place, everybody will, you will face opposition, of course, because some things are difficult, because of regulation, etc., and stuff, and this, and financing, it will cost billions of euros. But then again, it's also helpful to provoke these discussions, and to see if you want to follow these values, yeah, many things may have to change, and I think it's very interesting to, yeah, to stay in touch and to focus on the discussion and to see, yeah, where it gets to. So that's some overall reaction.
Yeah. Yes. One of the first things I think of, and before giving the word to somebody else, is that are we aligning all on the same values? No, then come regulation, then come economics, etc., etc. Yes. No, but I wonder if the current situation and aligning values is there. No, I don't know what the prospect. Government of the Netherlands thinks of all the values that are being set up here. No? We don't stop talking about diversity, and we are putting images of a diverse world, no? Where things are flexible and public space is a space for all. No? And no matter how we design, what you said, the brick, no? Or how much that's going to cost, but if we don't even agree in values, then I think we are in a sort of a tricky moment. I would like to give the word to, to you, also visiting from outside the faculty. If you could introduce yourself and let us know what's your impression of this.
My name is Zene Minkels. I'm probably invited because I'm director of the Dutch Tenant Union. So don't really speak on behalf of them, but I can ask questions on behalf of them. And then you talk about 3.6 million households, so about 40% of the Dutch, or of the people living in the Netherlands. I think not very many of them would argue that the ideas that we have just seen are brilliant ideas, and that I just had time to read the introduction. But if we can live in sustainable, circular, factory made, which might mean enough buildings, enough houses, in neighborhoods that are a little bit differently designed, with more participations of the people actually inhabiting those quarters and those areas. And if we can have space for rivers, and if we can live at places where we don't drown, or at least our cellars are not wet, then I think most tenants would, if it's also affordable, be very, very happy. Now then the question, why are we not starting, is that I think that a lot of the political debate is about completely different things than those basically more important things that are going to be with us for like 100 or 200 or much more years. So I think that's one of the big problems, is that we are not arguing what can be a long-term viewpoint, how to work on. However, 50% of my job definitely is being a lobbyist, and lobbying, the civil servants and the minister to make the right choices in the smaller legislations that they are presenting today, that are really about the last millimeters, the deepest in the algorithms that you can to get the right houses for the right people, but there's not enough houses, so you invite another algorithm. And that's the fight we are basically having with them now in different legislations. And time again, when the coalition fails, so when they give up, which happens every 2 years now, and I will not make any, no, I think you're looking in the future, you're in the charge of looking in the future. But what I mean is, when they fall over again and we have elections and we have a new plan, again we are in the same algorithms, small legislative, small steps. And what I really like is that you are here doing some, of course, perfect thinking or well-educated thinking, really deep thinking on a much longer term viewpoint. And I think it will definitely be very good if that comes not only to the civil servants, but also to the political decision makers, and let them discuss this and let them make pictures and promise stories like this to the people that elect them. I think, that was what I was thinking listening to you.
Yvonne, I think you're next. So could you please share with us your point of view of the policymakers from the gemeente Delft?
Okay,
Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Yvonne de Ruiter. I'm a policymaker for housing currently at the gemeente Delft. And when I look at this book, it's all very recognizable, you know. We know what we have to do. And this book gives a really good overview and also of all the courses of action that we could undertake. So this makes me thinking, why don't we do it? And of course, there's money. And of course, there's the fact that all the spatial planning and housing rules and regulations, they don't fit the challenges of today. And this should be addressed. But I think deep down inside, there is a much more basic problem, maybe a new Dutch disease, this fear of density. We Dutch, we consider Holland as like a collection of small towns. And these images that you showed in the beginning, you know, this makes people physically unwell. And I recognize this in my colleagues, you know, and I recognize this in my neighbors, and I think it can be recognized on all systemic levels. Do we really want 1 million houses? Do we want 15,000 houses in Delft? And a lot of people, they say yes, but they feel no. And I think this is like a mentality or a collective awareness which we have to change from, bottom up. I don't know how, but it's something that I feel and recognize in my work constantly. And do we dare to think about quantity instead of quality? Well, you're all designers. You will all say, no, it has to be fitting, it has to be alluring, it has to add to spatial quality and address all these other themes of climate change and ecology and everything and everywhere. And then, so we're not building.
We are blocking you somehow. No, one of the things that maybe that there's a certain role in design. Mm-hmm. The role of design is to try to make citizens want to live in collective housing.
Yes.
And this is maybe where we are not, let's say, succeeding. No, probably here within the faculty, we produce these images, which for us are evocative enough, but probably we don't know how to transfer that will to want to live there to others. And I don't know who does have it to do it. That's room for thoughts. All of us. I wonder now that we have had our guests from outside, if I can call you like that, participate. What's the reaction from the faculty? There's many of you who have participated in the document, and others not, but know a lot about urban design, housing, and the city and the territory. Please, do you have any questions, any comments? Darinka.
Thanks. I would like to react to something you said. I really like the way you
Darinka, would you like to, and just introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm
second.
Darinka Zischke. I'm associate professor here at this faculty, and I'm the author of a recently published book, which is about collaborative living forms, or collective formen, which deals with a lot of the things you are mentioning. So I couldn't help myself but jump at your provocation in a way. First of all, the issue of density. You said we need to deal with something deep inside Dutch people, which is about our fear of density. And that really triggered me because about 20 years ago, when I worked in London, I was involved in a study about density. And, well, with architects, geographers, and so on. And the first thing we did was look at precedents of other European cities or countries where people would live at higher densities and the quality of life would be good. And the Netherlands was one of the examples, alongside Denmark and, well, the city of Paris and, you know, well-known examples of density, Barcelona and so on. So when I came years later to work here, I was really surprised by the Dutch self-perception that they are individualistic. First of all, they say, oh no, we Dutch, we're really like our privacy, we're very individualistic, we are not meant to live in collective housing. And for me as a foreigner, it's difficult to accept that argument because I do think you are living at higher densities than the average European people, certainly countries like the UK, you know. If you look at their housing, you look at the way you live here, and I think you also have a very strong collective ethos. You are a very associative nation, you know, you're a member of clubs, you are really packed next to each other. So, sociologically speaking, you know, I think that there's something there about the way you see yourselves. But I think that's something that, talking about cultural change that can lead to spatial change, there's something there that we should be exploring and questioning. To what extent are you, you know, is this enough? And then another question, perhaps even more provoking, is, are you afraid of density, you as a nation, or of otherness? So it's an open question that I ask.
You want to reply, Yvonne?
Well, yeah, okay. I agree with the things that you say, and I think that the core of the solution might be in this, yeah, a collective awareness that we do have, and I think it was, I think, the third solution in the book, you know, more collective housing and house sharing and like the low density in the low housing occupancy that we have now, which is something of the last like 30 years maybe. This can be turned, this can be switched back, and that's something that we should really do. And I hope this is part, and this is also a quick fix maybe.
But I think, Darinka, that you are right. The last provocation, no? Are you afraid of density, or are you afraid of living next to someone you don't know? I think that's something, because I see my students from the Netherlands say, I love, or the Dutch say, I love Paris. I love Paris, I love the way it is. Paris has 25,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. It's the highest, the densest capital within the European Union. Barcelona, which is admired and put as an example constantly. Even I am sick and tired of putting the Barcelona block as an example of urbanity. Really tired. It's 6,000 people per square kilometer. And it's put on maybe we are very wrong at the Faculty of Architecture, giving examples that outside are, as you say, I love it. I love going on holidays. I love my weekends there, but not in my backyard. Don't put me next to so many people. I don't know, it's just following up on your provocation, and I would like others to maybe react to that and say what is it that they think. Fransje.
Yes, thank you. Frans Hoijmeijer, also working in this faculty. I want to respond, but I also had another question. I do think that Dutch people really like a doorsonwoning, which means a ground-bound house with a front and a backyard, where you can open your curtains and everybody can look inside all night, right? So I don't know if it's about the density, but it is about sort of ideal of living on the ground. And I am also quite interested indeed how to change this, because if I look at, for example, the housing market in the past 20 years, changed, of course, enormously. So the house that I now live in is worth, I don't know, like 5 times more. And when I bought it, I also didn't think it was a very big house. It has many square meters, but there were bigger houses, let's say. But now I think I live like in a huge villa that's worth a lot, right? So yeah, well, for me, it's the same house. So the appreciation of houses, what we think is normal, has been changing. And I think especially if you look at the work, it is indeed in a long time, right? So us as designers, we can draw and predict space over 100 years, but we cannot predict what people will like over 100 years. We are not able to interview these people on these plates. So I think what we should ask ourselves is, how can we help people? Maybe it will come by itself because we're going to have disasters, probably. How can we help people to want this also? And these are not us today, because we're probably all not going to be here. So these are going to be people where we don't know yet. So I also think we can think in how we can help change towards people also accepting this new reality. I always take Tokyo as an example. They already lived with 1 million people in 1900, so their standard of living is adapted to this. And I think, we should not talk about, do people want this? No, how can we help people wanting this?
Should I
Yes.
Should I respond?
I think the question was addressed to you.
Yeah. I was, 2 things which come to my mind about, or 3 things about this resistance. Peter, you were pointing out several times that, 40% or more of the people who are looking for apartments or homes want to have grondgebonden, want to have a home with a front door, a garden, and a space to put this dreadful trampoline with a thing around it. I find that always quite depressing to hear that. And at the same time, one thing which...
Sorry, it's even becoming worse. If you look at the several housing demand surveys, even there's more demand for that kind of living, actually.
Yeah.
So, but of course, the population is changing nowadays. So we will have much more elderly. We have much more single-family houses. So the demand will actually, in the future, will change, of course.
Will change for that.
And the general acceptance will also change. So if we have good examples how to live.
Yeah. Because for that one, I wonder. One thing is what I was thinking about. Is how in housing, I don't know how and when it changed, but how in homes our kitchens were changing from still in the 60s, 70s, kitchens were a separate place. Somewhere it changed that we got kitchen islands and open kitchens, and I still remember discussions with my mom, like, oh, well, my sister-in-law, they have this open kitchen, but it smells everywhere, and I would never do that, and it's ridiculous, etc. And now one of her favorite pastimes is watching American house renovation programs, and they said, hey, they all have these islands. You also have an island. Yeah, we also have an island. So something somewhere was changing, which I think is also a kind of change. Okay, you accept maybe more smell, but it's much more. Your space is more flexible, so it is possible to have these kind of changes. And if I see friends of mine in Germany, in Hamburg, who are living in their second Baugruppenproject, self-developed, where I thought their apartment where they live, a couple with 2 kids, to me seemed rather small, also considering that it's their second project, they are able to determine and design something, but this whole complex has a multifunctional theater room, it has guest homes, it has a orangerie, it has so many spaces which they share and can use, and for them it's completely natural and common, that I have the hope that if we would have more examples, and there I'm looking again at the Darinka, an advocate for collective housing and self-developed projects, that hopefully if we can point out, look, this is what you could also get, and you could have a big trampoline and put all the children there, that maybe something could change there.
Ivan? Yeah.
Just one small reaction, because I'm really rejoicing what you are saying. The open plan kitchen is killing for every form of house sharing that we aspire at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
There's... So first, Maria. Maria, you want to say? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I was the leader of the 1 Million Homes project that was presented by Javier, and I would say congratulations, Vision Team. It's very nice to see the next step and see that some key lessons from the 1 Million Homes project got to the next level. I mean, we started 1 Million Homes, it's already 4 or 5 years ago. Then we say, well, there's a crisis, housing crisis in the Netherlands, 1 million homes are needed. But then very soon we had architecture on board, and they said, well, you know, housing crisis, we have 53 square meters per person. Do we have a crisis? We live quite spacey. So I think it's very important to realize, apart from density of houses in a neighborhood, that the housing space we have, we use it inefficiently. That's a very important observation. And I really like the way the Vision team deals with the next level of how can we use it better. The existing buildings, transforming empty offices, but also how to use the houses available, to split them, to make them adaptable. So that's really nice. And another thing you brought to the next level, Peter, you are here, is the values, the connection with design for values. I think it is very important. Martijn, you said, well, you have some values, some like it not. I think the key challenge here is to come up with challenges that we can share when it comes to climate change, when it comes to spatial quality. I mean, we have a political debate. We have changes. Javier was starting the introduction by, how did you call it? It was the neoliberal destruction of the Dutch tradition of housing and urban planning. And I like this challenge, working with values. Where are we going? What do we want for the future? How can we plan? And I would like to ask the Vision team, can I interpret this vision as an attempt to undo this destruction, to come up with a new vision based on shared values for the future? And you say, well, we can start. How can we start? I will end with one thing, and that is we observe that we have a rich tradition. We are quite a rich country as the Netherlands, and we also have many, many ideas. As a 1 Million Homes team, we were involved in the selection of the winners of many competitions. The competitions of Panorama Lokaal, So You Think You Can Build, the Woon Pioneers. So when you ask people, what could the future look like? How do you want to live? There are many, many ideas. But something peculiar about Dutch housing is the complexity. You know, Martijn Eskenazi, based at K. When it comes to the political debate, all the rules and regulations, complexity was the main barrier for all the new ideas. And I think it's very important to think when we talk about research for design, designing for a joint vision. it is very important to see how to overcome the hurdles we have, how to create room for housing and room for innovation. So I come back to my question to the vision team now. Do you think it could be an attempt, this vision, to undo this destruction of the Dutch tradition in urban development and housing?
Vision team.
It's like tossing a hot potato.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Amine, I think this one also works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it work?
Okay.
Is it working?
You want to keep it,
I
Maria?
don't feel that it's
Do you
working.
want to
Yeah,
keep it in
I
case?
think we-
Okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Amina Gorbani. I'm an associate professor from the Faculty of Technology, Policy and Management. I was a member of the Vision team, and I'm really loving the discussion because I think the core that we tried to bring together was to really step away from the technocratic point of view, the first and the last, and really step in the middle and see what's going on from a societal point of view. And I would say, like, the really very core message, in my view, is this being aware of the values and really designing based on those values. And to respond to, you said about this people changing over time. Well, I mean, research shows that the thing that changes least are the values of people as compared to technology development, etc. So if we actually design our new living based on the values that we have, there is a chance that we'll have a more stable future just because the core values change very infrequently. And and then this, so for example, I like that, I think it was you talking about the, about the people, so for example, the backyard. So if the Dutch people want a backyard and a front yard, we have to see what's the value that leads to them wanting the front yard and backyard. And if we know what that core value is, then we can have alternative solutions to backyard and front yard that are just as pleasing to the society, and people would go for them. So maybe in the future, it won't be the backyard that's attractive, but the value behind it will stay the same, and it will have a different form, such as the kitchen, the open kitchen, for example. So, so I think that's, yes, I agree with you, and I 100% agree that it's not about destruction, but rather starting now and thinking about resilience, about the future, about the core values of the society, safety and security. I mean, when do people do not want to be safe or secure, right? The form changes, but security as a value always stays the same. And if you build for security, for example, then that will make us more resilient in the future, no matter what comes along, especially the climate crisis.
There's another question from Luisa here.
Yeah, I think, well, taking from her last point, I think we're talking about values, many of which are very clear to perhaps the vision team and which are very clear or talked about within a design faculty here. But I think many of the points or many of us have brought today the need for a cultural shift in order to materialize this vision or for this vision to be achieved. And I think, well, for example, Ulf talked about the change in kitchen plans. And I think that it's always a question of which follows which, right? If it's first the desire, the demand, and then design shifts to adequate to that demand, or if there is somewhat of a lead from the design side and that this, let's say, leverages a cultural shift. And I think I'd like to hear a bit from the design team. I know that many of the, or much of the vision also requires changes in policy, as we have discussed today. But how do you see the role of design? And I think the visualizations are a really great opportunity to discuss this, because it was a bit about making this apprehensible, understood by people who are not only in the design faculty and who are, let's say, familiar with the theme, right? So how do you see, is it really providing the spatial framework, the visuals, in order to leverage or promote this cultural shift? or is it a bit, do you expect that the spatial, let's say, development of this builds on an ongoing trend? Because I am a bit skeptic, and it is a question of what is, let's say, the agency here of design or of the built environment in promoting and leveraging these shifts?
Marcel, maybe. Marcel?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your remarks and also your question. My name is Marcel Hertog. I was also a member of the vision team. So when it comes to integrated design, so what we do is that we, together with the stakeholders, so all the stakeholders, so we look at what are here the opportunities, but also what are my basic needs. And then the values are also there, but what we see is also that these needs also, they are not fixed. So when you make design with the people, then you can say, oh, maybe if we do maybe in that way, maybe we can combine it with energy, or maybe we combine it with another type of housing, etc. So it's more an iterative, and also in that process, you are more and more aware what your needs are or what is possible in a certain, on a certain space. So we look at a certain district or an area so with multiple challenges. So we also always look at different transitions in a specific area. So it's not only about the housing, but it's also about the energy, it's about the water safety, it's about the inclusiveness. So and when you make these designs, then we have done a couple of those. Good experience with that to make this more integrated designs.
But does it only build on, let's say, ongoing values, or values that are identified within the stakeholders? Or because the way we're speaking about it, there are almost new values which should be.
Yeah, so but when you are doing this at the moment with the people and with the organizations, but also with the citizens, then they can say what's important for me or what's very important for me. But they also understand that they cannot want too much, because
Well, but what if, let's say, these what I want, what I am comfortable with, goes against what is needed in order to achieve, let's say, in fact, more effective tackling of the housing crisis? Because I think that at some points we are there. We are not, it's as someone said, not in my backyard, but you have to be willing to negotiate certain traditional or core values in order to achieve new ones. And then I think also thinking in terms of future-proof planning and how far do we push these? Because I think that we talk about values within, and I understand that there's a big part of the whole vision working that is incorporating new changes or planning for uncertainty in certain points, right? But how much do we really leave space for unknown or open for different changes? And how does that really include maybe new values which we aren't really aware of?
Yeah. So on the one hand, so you can look at the housing, but what we see is that don't look at very specifically only from one sector, so try to combine it with the others. On the other side, then we look to more adaptive measures. So how can you do more adaptive? And then we can work for scenarios, different scenarios. How can we do on water safety, heat stress, etc. But also for the buildings. So how can you design the buildings that there is more flexibility within the building? So and not very fixed. And I know also colleagues here are working on it. So we're also doing it more on for the room for the river, etc. So we look at the infrastructures, but also I know at Schiphol they also look at piers who are adaptive, but you can also have it in the city, but there are colleagues at architecture looking at it. Yeah.
I also would say, Luisa, from the designer's point of view, I would also say, and I'm not part of the vision team, as you know very well, but I participated in the fabrication of those illustrations, and I think one of the most important roles of design is to make others want to live there So that's one of the things that we are trying to achieve by means of design. Yeah, sorry. So I'm going to give the word to Alex. One of the things that I would like to comment before you give us your comment is that there was this idea of density. I don't know if we need also to, let's not get confused between density and high density. I think that there's a moment in which we may be very, let's say, scared of densities like Hong Kong, which is about 13 to 14 FAR. That may be scary, but there's a middle ground that can be achieved, which works really, really well, which I do defend. And in order to give you the word, Alex, I would also say that one of the areas that the vision document is actually looking at is those intermediate areas, no? In which there are not so many people living that could be densified. And with that, I give you the word.
Thank you for this. Alex Wandel, also associate professor here in that building. Thank you for pointing that bridge to my research, but my comments are actually on something different. On that. And I wanted to add to the discussion on two things. The one is, we were discussing about shared values, and we need to come to shared values. And so I'm not sure if we really get what we want, if we aim this, or be aware that we may not get what we want and what we envision, because I think we lie if we are not saying that the big parts of the neoliberal values over the last 2 decades that led to where we are were actually shared values in society and also in our profession. I think, Javier, the images you showed us reducing Paris to dwellings per square meters, and then kind of showing these density studies and stripping Paris of its spatial qualities with this one is actually a way of thinking that is related to that. And I think so we really should be aware that our profession is and was part of the problem where we maneuvered ourselves into. And the other one is, I was really intrigued by what you said. And then we don't build. And I think we should also stand here and think a minute about perhaps it's not that bad that we are not building at the moment, but take the time to really consider how should we build, how maybe differently build. Because I think we are in this very strange situation, not strange, a very specific situation at the moment that from a planetary point of view, we should actually say, well, we cannot build more. While from a social point of view, we need to build more. And I think what the vision shows really nicely is that there are these different ways, or there are different ways of thinking about this. So I think it's this taking as a profession this point of time really serious to think about things and is really crucial.
Yeah. Thank you. Nelson has a comment question.
Yes, well, thank you. Well, first, congratulations to the Vision team Wonen. And I think it's a great document. I was, happy to join some of the meetings, and well, even though I'm not very proficient in Dutch, but still it was very, very good to participate in those meetings. Now, there's one thing that maybe these documents, in my mind, or maybe as a little provocation, that maybe is missing, which is benchmarking. Now, in the sense that, to understand what's the reality in the Netherlands, maybe we should also look into what's happening in Europe. So now the thing, with this report published by the European Union, where you have different data about housing, so the Netherlands is only second to Ireland in the percentage of people living in houses versus flats. So almost 80% of the people in the Netherlands live in houses. So meaning having indeed this direct contact with the street, the front yard, backyard things that we have been talking about. And only 22% live in flats. Now this comes at the certain, next to, for example, on the opposite side is Spain. So in Spain you have 80% of the people in Spain live in apartments and only 20% live in houses. So why is this? So let's maybe try to understand also what are the aspirations that are triggering this, or maybe if they are not the aspirations, maybe are the policies that trigger this. Let's not forget that just 20 years ago, that was the VINEX program, which basically sort of injected 1 million homes, meaning 1 million houses with a direct front door to the outside space to, to contribute to generate this shift from the vision of the collective housing of the post-war period. So this is one thing, maybe to put things in perspective. But on the other hand, there's also this issue with density. Now, it's also amazing when we realize that the Netherlands is the third densest country in the world if you don't count places like Monaco, Singapore, and Hong Kong, right? But if you think of, let's say, countries with a certain size, I'm sorry for those who come from Hong Kong or what I mean is that the first one is Bangladesh, the second one is South Korea, the third one is the Netherlands. So the Netherlands is the third densest country in the world in terms of population. But also it's the second biggest exporter of agricultural produce. So how is this even possible? I mean, this looks like a kind of conundrum. How did you manage? How do you manage to have 80% of the people living in houses with a front door, but still be the second largest country exporting agricultural goods with the size of that we know? But also, if we think of in terms of the precious resource, which is ground.
And the pigs.
How do you manage that? I mean, ground is so expensive, it's so scarce. And how come that you occupy 80% of the houses with homes? It's amazing. Then we would say, why don't we create for housing, things like we did for smoking, or for, trying to stimulate people to become vegetarian, or to indeed, let's say, try to, change the habits, and this should be top-down initiatives. So something like, any kind of large or mid-sized planning should say, it's not possible to develop a plan that does not entail a certain density. Otherwise, you will be depriving us of one of the most precious things that we have, which is our ground. And that then will bring interesting design challenges, because as you know, density can be measured by different kinds of things. We can measure density by the number of dwellings per hectare, right? But we don't know how many people live in those dwellings. We can also measure density by the number of people per hectare. Then we are talking about, indeed human density to a certain extent. And we can also measure density by FSI, which means, floor space and a certain commodification of housing. Now, the thing is, so if we take all these into considerations, then maybe these can become interesting challenges for all of us to think, and especially for those people here in this faculty, because we also need to say, well, if the challenge is to have at least in any plan that we have, that we should always have at least 300 inhabitants per hectare, what does that mean in terms of meeting or trying to address the aspirations of our fellow countrymen? And how can we, as architects, urban planners, policymakers, make that vision actually appealing? Not something that is dreadful. Oh my God, I don't want to go there. I want to move to Portugal, which is, by the way, a very nice country to move. So I guess what I'm saying is that these things that we are talking about, also the diversity, promoting more diversity in terms of housing, possibilities of living, co-living, and so on and so forth. These things indeed entail, to a great extent, also an imagination of how living together, not necessarily in the same house, but living together in the same world is. And that should be something that should not be overlooked, because these things, in the end of the day, also mean a great role for us designers, but also an engagement with all the disciplines that come together. But indeed, the Netherlands, I just want to say that, and that's why this kind of, I'm sorry, I will wrap up. That's why the benchmarking, or in other words, bringing examples from other contexts of what happens. I mean, what Javier did a little bit in the introduction will be quite interesting. What is the direction where we want to go? Or maybe what we have now, it's actually quite okay.
Thank you. Martijn, I think you wanted to...
Yes, first I can answer your question, why do we have so many people and so many vegetables on a small country? That's because the vegetables live in very high densities. They don't have the shared value of having a single family home, of course. You can go to the Westland and see for yourself, but I guess you know that. One thing was connected to, I guess, to you, it's about the idea that some core values of people are common and relatively stable over time. But then again, with, let's say, the political perspective, it's very important about the wording of your core values, as you denoted, because if I look at this one, the resilient neighborhoods, that's of course values, let's say, have a resilient neighborhood for climate change, but also for the social perspective, you can word it either as diversity, or you can word it as community. And this has, let's say, in the political sense, a completely different ring to it. So you should also be careful about the wording, because some of the words provoke some left-wing or right-wing or whatever emotions, and that's also to be taken account to if you want to bring it further. And the main thing is that what you can do as the TU Delft or as other researchers, let's say starting from some values and working it out through a vision, is that you can also communicate, well, okay, we should discuss with politics about the vision and not about the budget or the regulations or what you call the algorithms, the small lobbying algorithms, which you are of course part of as well, Monte. So think also about the wording in whom you address. It's communication and yeah, diversity and community, you can take it from the same picture.
That's another question.
Yeah. I would like to draw...
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Peter van Maas, philosopher, TPM faculty. I'm involved in the vision teams, and I probably make some resonance. I support the vision team, and would like to actually take some distance from Paris and from the idea of benchmarking, because I'm proud of the vision team that it took a much broader perspective on architecture. It was not just about designing the house or density. It was much more. So for two reasons, I would like to take some distance from Paris. First of all, I don't like Paris. I guess I'm the only one. I like the Eiffel Tower, but it's a shitty city. It's clocked. It's very expensive. The outskirts are the most horrible places of Europe. I don't understand why you want to benchmark Holland with Paris. We don't take that as your ideal. So just no.
I'll reply to that later.
The vision team looked beyond just densities and the design of housing. So it looked at it, but it looked also beyond it. So Thijs was referring to another way of organizing the building system process. That is important to realize our values. And so I'm from the faculty of TPM, philosopher, values is central. But it was not translated just in density and design, but it was also translated into production processes, or building process, and it was translated into new regulation for how to use areas which are now for industry, for little companies. How to change those rules. So it's much broader, and I would like to also draw that attention to that. And now you can go back to Paris.
There are more questions here. Anna.
No, hey, Anna, I'm graduating.
Maybe you want to come here.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Anna. I'm graduating now, actually, hopefully in 3 months. Let's see. But backstory, I'm Polish. I moved to Berlin for 6 years, and now I live here in Rotterdam for the past 2 years. And I think if we want to change it, because I love this vision of more co-living situations and stuff like this, I just want to address one thing that is bothering me. That building new houses nowadays has really negative kind of vision within the society. Because, for example, in Rotterdam, all the places, cultural places where young people are actually hanging out, are being sold to the developers, and they're being destroyed, and then there's going to be new housing built there, which is fine, but actually we all know that we cannot afford this because they're going to be, most of this is like really, really expensive condos. So I think like we need to think about the future of how we're doing this and for who we are doing this, but as well how we are approaching this right now. Because if something is closing down and we hear the slogan of there's going to be new housing, nobody's happy about this in the city. Like nobody's happy about this. Because like talking about from experience, we don't have anywhere else to hang out right now in Rotterdam. And I think we're building for mostly, not mostly, but in a big part we're building for people from my generation as well. And if we have such negative kind of associations with building new houses, we have to change it to actually achieve something that can be so great as those visions are. So there's something like to be thought of. It's not really a question, just kind of this remark that I'm hearing around, and myself included, is not really excited about the future of Rotterdam, which is sad. Huh?
A third of the new buildings will be affordable.
Yeah, but what kind of percentage is it gonna be? And you know, and then there's another question of like this: how do you? Sorry, I understand you, but then there's another point of this, like, you're destroying people are destroying such a nice atmospheres of creativity within the city and nightlife, and not only nightlife, but as well culture and art, to put new housing that is not really...
Almost 400,000 people are looking for a dwelling.
I
They're
get it,
building
and I'm
two-thirds of the buildings will be affordable. So for middle and low income groups.
Is it so?
Yes, that's true.
Okay,
that's true.
but that has to be communicated, because it's not communicated.
Sorry,
but
but
you know
it's...
what I mean? Like, that's
yeah,
what I
but
mean. It's
then you
not
should be aware what's happening here. Then you don't read anything, because it's all in the news. It's the minister is telling it on television, on radio. Two-thirds is... That is one of the... Maybe you could say it could be a problem, because how are we going to finance all that dwellings? That is a problem, but it's not a problem that it is not accessible anymore. Okay, so you should be quite concrete. And also, what I would like to say is that we are a lot of talking about use of land, etc. It's also not a problem if you look at the programs. These 980,000 houses which are in the program, there are already locations for that. So you can discuss these are the right locations, but that's not the problem.
I know.
So there is enough space to build these houses, and you can discuss if these are the right houses, or that we may have another program, but it's not a problem that we don't have enough space. It's not a problem at all.
I totally agree, but I think I'm just talking about the stigma of new housing within our society.
But you're in a very special group, eh?
Yeah,
so
course,
it's your problem.
I get it.
Yeah, so most people who are looking for a dwelling, 500,000 people almost, have a completely different vision than you have, eh?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, but to be honest, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of my kind of group age people that are going to live in this country.
Yeah, but my children also want to live, and they're not in your group probably, and they're just looking for a house. These are young people who are looking for a house. Two-thirds is affordable. We have the space already, so that is what's actually happening.
Okay, I cannot wait to see that. I'm really open to that.
Let's see.
Like, let's see. I really hope it's going to happen.
I have another comment from Maria, and then it's yours next. Birgit is next. Maria.
I really like this discussion about the future, the vision, what is desirable or not, and the idea about values. There are different values. They are really important. And I'm doing housing research for some decades. And I see in the Netherlands, when you talk about housing, the political debate, it's really left, right. It's about the mortgage interest deduction. It's about social housing. So there is a very much a political reflex. This is left, this is right. And I think we are in a new stage now. I mean, we have a new political composition, many people at the table to form the new government. There are parties, maybe not really right, not really left, without a vision on housing, some of them, the largest party. And I think it's really the challenge now to think about what do we share, apart from political left and right, when it comes to the future, the values of resilience. And what is it? Is it the community? Is it dense? It's about wording. So I think it's very important to make the next step with this thinking into values and how do the affordable houses in Rotterdam, what do they look like? Do people want to live there? Do people like the density? Is it attractive? So I would suggest as a follow-up for this vision to further develop these values and how to deal with them and how to make it useful for the political debate at the moment. I think there is an urgent need. And I mean, housing is a human right. It is a basic need. And it is very important for the rest of life. If we start from there, that everybody needs a roof over their head, and that we can use the space that is available more efficiently. You know, what can it look like, and how can we come across all these political short-term fights? How can we make the new coalition and the ministries think about 20 years later, 50 years later? What we build now will be there over 50 years. So, you know, dealing with housing is investing in the future. So it's important to think now about where we want to be in 50 years. So I suggest to continue the debate about these values and to influence the political debate at the moment. So, Martijn, may I ask you, what do you think about this?
Very quickly, I also would like, maybe before Martijn responds, I would like to give the word to Birgit, who never spoke yet. She's also part of the, never spoke, also part of the vision team.
Now,
Sorry,
hello, my name is Birgit Hausleitner. I'm part of the urban design section, urbanism department. My research focus is very much mixed use, but I want to start my statement not with my research experience, but actually with my experience of being a resident of Delft and having had the opportunity to actually be one of the fortunate ones to build my own house as a self-builder in the Koendersbuurt. And I think this is a comment I would like to give also to rethink the development schemes in the Netherlands. Because what I can see, what we were allowed to do and what we could do with a specific budget, and there I come back to the students' claims. I really second what you've been saying, because what we could do then is not possible if I would need to buy the same house from a developer. That's just different budgets. So rethinking different schemes of how you empower way more people to take actions themselves, rethinking a bit more, going back to Habraken, what are the dragers and what can we allow the people to actually do themselves? That is an important debate we should be having when we talk about housing. Not only letting develop everything by developers, which also have a standard scheme for the standard citizen, which our society is way more getting diversified. So we have to see how can we accommodate that. And empowering people is one of the points. I would like to give just 1 second comment that I think one of you made in the beginning, that where are values actually embedded is mainly in these 2 visions, in the middle images of the visions. And that's one of my research inputs I would like to add. I think the first drawing is really, really important as well. I don't see this as technocratic, but we see from an urban perspective where the networks are. And then not only talking about mobility and green-blue, but also actually networks of urbanity, networks of publicness. That is already setting the frame for all the rest. So I think it's really important to think through the scales. And housing is not just a square meter problem that we can solve in a parcel, but it depends on all the networks and it's embedded in.
Let me round with Darinka and then Martijn. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just a reaction on the discussion on values. I think that we also need to be aware that we will never share the same values entirely. And this has to do with increasing diversity in society, generational diversity. We just had a fantastic example of an exchange between 2 very conflicting ways of looking at the same thing. And I think we really need to acknowledge that we have to come to terms that values are also very dynamic. There are values that are changing amongst many people. We are becoming more diverse. There are more single people. They don't want necessarily the same as families. And this is only going to continue to change. So I think that this vision needs to be a dynamic vision. We need to keep an eye for what is changing. And for instance, preferences by people. I mean, we cannot continue to measure preferences for housing based on the same methods. We need to focus more on what are the essential attributes that people are looking for, not necessarily standardized options. And the self-build, collective self-build or individual self-build is part of the new demand that we're seeing. People don't necessarily want to live in these cookie-cutter houses. Some people want to live differently. So yeah, let's try to introduce this dynamism, I would say, in our research, in our designs, and that's where the flexibility and adaptability of a stock comes in also. That's a role for designers and engineers, I think.
Martijn and finally Maria.
thank you. It's a very interesting discussion. I think it's on one hand, it's very good to put the idea of working from value-based and vision-based back on the debate. You should maybe be very prominent or provocative or maybe even aggressive about it, that we need to talk about these issues. Where are we going to? But then on the other hand, there's the risk of, there was a meeting last week or the week before that in which we also had this grand scheme of things, okay, and discussions about, let's say, the very long-term essence of anything. And important questions were asked, what society do we want to be, or what economy do we want to strive after? That's of course very entertaining and relaxing, because it's a day out from, let's say, the daily work of politics. But then again, in Dutch there's a saying, morgen zit er vis in. So tomorrow it's an old newspaper and it will be used for wrapping fish. So that's very cynical, of course, but it also points to the point that if you're talking too abstract, too long term, it's easy for people to enjoy the discussion and don't do anything with it. So if you want to provide, let's say, guidance, you say, well, we should talk about visions and value, etc. again. This may be a core message of what you're promoting. And then on the other hand, if you talk about where do you want to be in 2050, then that's maybe too long term. Maybe we should focus, okay, what do we need to attain? What steps do we need to take before 2030? And that's a challenge already. That's, for us, that's very long time. That's very long term. And for you, it's short term, and we can't do anything on that. But let's say in the daily sense at the ministries, 2030 is 2 cabinets away.
Martijn, we need to move forward. And Leo asked for a turn. Maria, I'm going to give him your turn. He didn't speak yet, if that's okay. We are running out of time. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Thank you, Leo.
Yes, my name is Leo van den Burg. I'm part of my business is urban design, but part of my business is education. And we haven't spoken about education tonight. And I think what I take with me from this document, first of all, but also from the discussion, is that we need to think this through also on an educative level. That much of the plans that are being made now by policymakers, like in programs for Mooi Nederland or other programs, will be the employers of the future in the coming decades. And I think we really have to make sure that the designers that we educate are capable of handling the complexity, the baffling complexity that we're actually talking about, not just only in the housing crisis, but especially when we combine this with environmental issues and social issues, etc. So I think it's, from my part, a plea to extend this discussion into education, but it's also a question to policymakers to come to us, to talk to us about what you think is necessary for our students to be able to work on the kind of tasks that we are talking about now.
Thank you. One question and then at the back, okay?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Hilda Moy, and I'm also working in this faculty. And I think we've been talking a bit around what's needed now and what's needed in the future. I published a book as well, by the way, just last week on adaptive reuse, transformation into housing. So that is exactly looking at this other stock that we already have. And with that comes also my wish that we could look a bit more forwards, because we do have this crisis now, and we have an aim to realize housing before 2030. But indeed, what we know is that housing, especially housing, but other buildings as well, they last much longer than what we know about the preferences and the wishes of the current users. And we also know, for instance, that at this moment we already have 75 to 80% of the buildings that we will have in 2075, because that's some small calculations made if we know how much we actually manage to add to the built environment each year. But that also means that we really need to take care about how do we use this space, and how flexible can we make it, how adaptive can we make it. So can we then, I would like to plea that we should really work on developing, when we do develop to build new, we should develop something that can take into consideration our changing needs, changing preferences, changing values, not only for the next 30 years, but for the next 50, 75, 100 years, and so on.
Last question over there.
My name is Brechtje van Ekelen. I'm also part of the Vision team, and I'm an anthropologist. I'm super interested in this discussion. I sense all this interest in culture, which is nice. I have 3 points to make, and I'll make them quickly. I'm really interested, and I think we as a Vision team are really interested in bringing this long-term back into the ministry. So I understand that at the moment there is maybe no space for it, but we have the same problem in our own, academia. Like, we also think in 4-year, 5-year projects, and what are the questions that animate our research for the next 20 years? It's a similar challenge of sort of stretching our timelines. But I think it would be irresponsible if we don't look ahead. So if we, build in places that will be underwater, etc. So I think in a sense our team also became, and was not from the beginning, but over time it became a sort of lobby to make the long-term part of political algorithms. Like, okay, what does it take to, and we can ask, our lobbyists, how can we get into these algorithms, and how can we get the long term there as well? Second point is this densophobia, super interesting again. And I think, it sounds, I'm actually from the industrial design department, where there's a lot of work on reframing, how do we get people to think differently? And for me, it's even an exercise, like, okay, why do we not want to densify? Because we don't want to look at other people, apparently. I get that, but if we learn that our view comes at the cost of having a teacher, not having a teacher, for our children, because they cannot live in the city that we may be living in, then, your shift, or your sense of place starts to shift. So I think there's cultural work to be done to sort of reframe our senses a little bit. And the third one was that I heard the lady from Delft say, I think, then it becomes complex, and then everything sort of grinds to a halt. Things stop again. And as an anthropologist, that's just a tragedy. But I also think that as a Vision team, we really became believers almost of the idea that, rather than thinking of complexity as a problem, that it's something that we need to, really embrace and retool ourselves to sort of work with complexity and intensify it, rather than think about how can we make everything simple, short-term, manageable. Like, let's sort of, get this thing on a burner and, take a rocket into the future.
Thank you very much. I'm really sorry, but we need to go. Time is ruling, and the team behind the table there needs to go. So we also thank them very much for the work that they keep doing. They keep improving what we do here. So I thank you all very, very much for this very interesting conversation. I have the impression that, and that's great for a moderator, because you just talk and talk and talk. That's really good. I don't have to pull out things from the panelists. So thank you very much for your participation. I have a few closing words.
One thing. Was it me? No. Yeah. If you didn't take one of these, please take one. If you think you know people who should really read this, if you know 5 people, take 5 more. So there is a whole box of these. And also these ones, they're super beautiful.
There's a pile there. So I just want to finish with a few closing words. It's a text I wrote once for my students, and it's funny how much time goes by and we're almost still in the same place. I have a few pictures. They're all from Paris. We can talk a lot about the values of the French Republic, but I think we have spoken a lot about values. And I don't think that, I mean, you may like or not Paris, it's totally personal and subjective, and fully understand. But at the same time, there's certain values that need to be protected. And at that, let's say that within the European Union, at that, we should give that to the French. How certain values are kept within the Constitution. We just saw how they have protected the right to abortion within the Constitution, so that no matter who comes next doesn't forbid it, or will have a very hard time to stop it, no? A fundamental right. Anyway, that's another discussion, but let's not forget to go to the bottom of the matter, to the bottom of the wishing well that housing represents to its residents. Do we really desire the dwellings that we show in these visions? Do we really want to live in the compact city, in the intermediate areas, in the circular communities, in the deltas or on the dikes? If we were to ask ourselves what the desired home really was, most of us would recognize that we have an ideal photo in mind. Suddenly, housing ceases to be a concept, something vital for the planet, ratios for judging future-proof spatial plans. Suddenly, housing becomes an uncomfortable subject which deeply affects our decisions. The compact city, the intermediate areas, the circular communities, the deltas or the dikes can be built, but while building the city, we cannot forget the home for the user who will put their name on the letterbox. Housing is a human right, not a product. Housing is the thread that weaves the city, but not only the city, also the entire territory. Housing is an extremely sensitive subject because it holds the hopes for a better life for many citizens. So if you believe in these visions, make every house a desirable home. Thank you very much and good night.